Welcome back to the deep dive. So, a lot of you reached out and asked for the ultimate shortcut. A complete, actionable roadmap to real estate investing that can take you from zero to confidently managing your first property.
Right, and so we took a deep dive into the source material for this one. It's a really comprehensive guide designed, well, explicitly for that journey to your first million in property.
Exactly.
Our mission today is pretty surgical. We're pulling out the foundational knowledge, the language you have to know, the best strategies, and of course, the critical protective steps.
We're basically turning this guide's table of contents into the high-impact nuggets you can use, like today. And if you're wondering why we're dedicating a whole deep dive to this, the guide is really clear about it. Real estate is, well, it's just overwhelmingly called the #1 wealth-building vehicle for beginners.
It really is. It's accessible, it's understandable, and maybe most important, it's scalable.
And the whole roadmap we're digging into is built around what the authors call the 5 core principles of successful real estate investing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you get these 5 principles, everything from how you find a deal to how you protect your assets, the whole process, it just becomes predictable.
So we're giving you that foundational structure right now.
Okay.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the very foundation. What are we actually buying? The source material kicks off with this distinction between land versus improvements. Why is that so critical?
Well, it sounds a little academic, I know, but it's completely fundamental, especially when you get to tax strategy.
Okay.
Land is just the dirt, the plot. The improvements, that's the structure built on it. So the house, the fence, the garage.
And the difference matters
The
because...
simple version is land doesn't really depreciate, but the improvements do. And if you confuse those, you miss out on one of the biggest tax breaks real estate even offers.
Got it. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting compared to other assets. The guide lays out the 4 ways real estate makes you money.
This is the core engine.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it seems to put it in a league of its own.
It does. I mean, think about it. Most investors in, say, the stock market or crypto, they're really only chasing 1 or 2 things. Price appreciation, maybe some dividends.
Right.
Real estate gives you all 4 at the same time.
So let's list them out.
First up is cash flow. That's your positive monthly profit after all the expenses are paid.
Okay, the basics.
Then, second, you have appreciation. The property's value going up over time, hopefully at least matching inflation.
Right.
Third is debt paydown. This is a big one. Your tenants are paying down your mortgage principal every single month. That's forced equity.
And the last one.
Tax benefits.
Yeah.
When you combine those 4, and especially when you use leverage, borrowed money, it creates this incredibly potent wealth amplifier.
Yeah.
Other assets, they just struggle to match that.
Okay, that concept of leverage is often the scariest part for beginners. Can you give us a quick analogy for why using a loan here is so powerful?
Sure. Think about buying a $100,000 asset. If you buy a stock, you have to put in the full $100,000. If it goes up 10%, you made 10 grand. Simple.
Okay.
But if you buy a rental house for 100 grand and you only put down 20,000, leveraging the rest, and that property value goes up by 10%,
Yeah.
you still made $10,000.
But you only put in 20,000 of your own cash.
Exactly. So that's a 50% return on your actual cash, all thanks to leverage.
That makes it crystal clear. Now, property types. There's a whole spectrum, but which 2 does the guide really say to focus on for starting out?
For financing and just management simplicity, beginners should really be looking at single-family homes. Or, and this is the ideal, duplexes, triplexes, and small multifamily, so 2 to 4 units.
Why the push for those small multifamilies?
They just immediately offer better cash flow stability. Your risk is spread out, and you have a much higher chance of profiting right away without the huge difficulty of getting commercial loans, which kick in at 5 units or more.
So the takeaway is stay small to start. Save the big apartment buildings and commercial stuff for later.
So if you want to move fast in this space, you just have to master the core language. The roadmap we're using lists 50 must-know terms, but we should really demystify the key metrics, the math you'll actually use.
Yes, exactly. Everyone gets cash flow, but let's tackle the acronyms that, separate the serious investor from the dreamer. How about cap rate versus cash-on-cash return?
Great place to start. So cap rate is generally for evaluating deals as if you paid all cash. No loan.
Okay.
You just divide the property's net operating income, or NOI, by its price. It's fantastic for comparing similar properties across different markets because it takes the financing part out of the equation.
And cash on cash, or COSI.
COSI is the one you truly care about as a leveraged investor. It measures the cash you get in a year divided by the total cash you actually invested. So down payment, closing costs, any rehab money.
Ah, so it's about your money's performance.
Precisely. Your cap rate might be 5%, but if you used good leverage, your cash-on-cash return could be 15, maybe 20%. It shows how hard your capital is working.
And we also have to mention ROI and IRR.
Right. ROI, return on investment, that's the simplest measure of your overall profit. It usually factors in all 4 income streams over a certain timeline.
But IRR is the more sophisticated one.
It is. Internal rate of return. It tells you the annualized effective compounded return rate. It's crucial for comparing deals with different timelines because it accounts for the time value of money. So a long-term hold versus a quick flip. IRR is the gold standard for that comparison.
That's the math. Now, what about the market itself? The guide lists 8 key drivers of property values. Can you pull out a few of the most important ones?
Absolutely. The top 3 are almost always job migration. I mean, where are the jobs going?
Follow the jobs.
Yep. Then the rent-to-price ratio. So how affordable is it to buy versus rent in that area? And third, infrastructure improvements. Think new highways, hospitals, transit lines. These are the macro trends.
And you have to put those drivers in context by understanding the 4 phases of every real estate cycle. If I get the timing wrong, what's the worst case scenario for a beginner?
Worst case is buying near the peak of that hypersupply phase in what we call an overheated market and then needing to sell fast during the recession that follows.
Ouch.
Yeah, your cash flow is probably thin because prices were so high and you have no buffer if values suddenly drop. You could be forced to sell at a loss. Knowing where we are today tells you if you should be hunting for cash flow or banking on appreciation.
That one distinction changes your entire strategy. Okay, so once you pick the city, you have to pick the neighborhood. The guide has some great practical tools for that.
These are street-level strategies. They talk about the 1-mile rule, which basically says to concentrate your search around things people want, good schools, cool shops, transit. Properties within a mile of those just hold their value better.
I really liked the drive the dollar exercise. It's about actually getting out there.
It's so effective. You start in the nicest part of neighborhood, and you literally drive, street by street, watching for changes.
What are you looking for?
You're observing how the houses look, the maintenance, the businesses nearby, as the prices drop. Your goal is to find that sweet spot, the best maintained property, just outside that expensive core. That's usually where the growth is headed.
And you're also checking things like crime rates, walkability, future development plans. You know, is that empty lot next door going to be a park or a factory? Okay, so we've got the math, we've got the market, now the action plan, financing. The whole point is using other people's money to amplify those 4 wealth streams we talked about.
That's the power play. And while beginners usually start with standard loans like conventional, FHA, VA, the investor who wants to scale needs to know about more advanced tools. The guide introduces the DSCR loan. That's debt service coverage ratio loan.
Okay, break that down. Why is the DSCR loan so important for scaling up?
Because it qualifies the property, not you, the borrower.
Oh, that's a big difference.
It's huge. If the property's projected income can cover its mortgage payment by a certain margin, usually like 1.25 times, the lender approves the loan based on the asset. Not your W-2, not how many other loans you have.
That's a massive advantage for someone trying to buy multiple properties.
It's the key.
Right.
And beyond loan types, the guide covers practical prep, like credit score hacks for better rates, and it busts some down payment myths.
Right, the idea that you always need 20% down, that paralyzes so many people.
It absolutely does. The source clearly outlines a bunch of low and no money down strategies, especially when you start getting creative.
Which brings us right to those creative strategies. These are the real aha moments for anyone who feels priced out. Let's hit the 2 biggest ones from the guide.
Okay, the first is hands down strategy, #2, house hacking. It is defined as the absolute best strategy for a beginner who's willing to live in the property.
So how does it work?
You buy a multi-unit property, a duplex or a triplex. You live in one unit, and the rent from the other units covers your mortgage, utilities, and maybe even puts cash back in your pocket. It's the path to, well, live for free or even get paid to live.
That is a game changer. And the second major strategy is the BRRRR method. That's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat.
Yep. The guide calls this the path to scale fast with little money. The whole mechanism relies on what's called forced appreciation.
Yep.
You buy a distressed property for cheap. You invest money to fix it up. That's the rehab. That forces the value higher. Then you get tenants in, and you refinance based on that new higher value.
And crucially, you pull your original investment back out.
Exactly. You pull your down payment and rehab money back out, tax-free, and you repeat the process with the exact same pot of cash. You recycle your capital while building equity.
That's how you see people go from one property to 5 so fast. And we should probably touch on the really creative stuff, like subject to or lease options.
Right. Subject to is where you buy a property subject to the existing mortgage. You take over the payments, the original loan stays in the seller's name, it's fast, low cost.
And lease options.
That's where you paid a small fee for the right to buy the property at a fixed price later on while you rent it today. They both solve financing problems, but, they require some specialized legal help.
And just a quick contrast, long-term buy and hold is about passive wealth building. Fix and flip is higher risk, more of an active job.
In short-term rentals, like Airbnb, the guide really sees that as an operational business, not a passive investment, especially with all the changing regulations now.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving from strategy to actually doing it, the biggest hurdle is finding deals that work on paper, and the guide is emphatic here. You have to find off-market deals.
The best investors aren't just scrolling the MLS.
No, you're not going to find the best returns there. You have to build a deal flow machine.
So what are the practical steps for a beginner to do that?
Well, they recommend strategies that involve direct outreach. You can work with wholesalers who are basically deal hunters. They find distressed properties, get them under contract, and then they sell you that contract for a fee.
And you can find them yourself?
You can. That's driving for dollars. Literally driving around looking for houses that look neglected. Tall grass, broken windows. Then you send them direct mail.
Trying to find a motivated seller.
That's the goal.
So once you have a lead, you need quick ways to filter it. The guide gives 3 non-negotiable quick rules.
Right. First is a 1% rule. The gross monthly rent should be at least 1% of the purchase price. So a $200,000 house should rent for $2,000 a month.
Okay, what's next?
The 50% rule. You budget about half your gross income for all the non-mortgage expenses. So maintenance, management, vacancies, all that stuff.
And the third one is for flippers, the 70% rule.
Yep. You should pay no more than 70% of the after repair value minus what you estimate the repairs will cost.
So these aren't your final analysis, but they're gatekeepers.
Exactly. If a deal fails the 1% rule, you just move on.
Now, beyond the numbers, there's due diligence. You have to know what to look for in an inspection. The roof, the foundation. But what's the biggest hidden nightmare a beginner could face?
It's usually not the physical stuff you can see. It's the invisible legal problems. The biggest nightmare is often an unknown lien or a competing claim on the property's title.
And that's why title insurance is so important.
It's non-negotiable. An old, unpaid contractor or lien or some weird probate issue. These things can kill a deal and cost you everything.
Let's pivot to the biggest lever for protecting that wealth, the tax advantage. This is really the secret sauce.
The cornerstone is deductions and depreciation. Depreciation lets you deduct the cost of the building over 27.5 years, even while the property value is going up.
And the guide mentions bonus depreciation.
Right, which lets you accelerate those write-offs. You can sometimes take huge paper losses in the first few years to offset income from your day job.
And for scaling up without getting hit by taxes, the 1031 exchange is key. Can you explain that simply?
It's basically a tax deferral. When you sell an investment property, you can put off paying capital gains tax if you immediately reinvest all the money into another like-kind property. You can chain these together for decades and just defer taxes, letting your wealth grow exponentially.
The guide also points out some specific loopholes, like the Augusta rule and some short-term rental loopholes. What are those?
The Augusta rule is super specific. It lets you rent your own home to your business for up to 14 days a year and collect that rent tax-free.
Oh, interesting.
And the short-term rental loophole is more complex. But basically, if you're active enough in your Airbnb, you can potentially use those paper losses, like depreciation, to offset your active W-2 income.
Okay, that's moving into real tax planning.
Yeah.
So finally, scaling requires systems. You have to use refinances and HELCs to pull out tax-free cash.
That's the core of the BRRR method in practice. But you can't do it alone. The critical task is building your team. You need investor-focused agents, lenders who get DSCR loans, good contractors, and a property manager you can trust.
Without that team, you're not an investor.
You're just a very, very busy landlord.
And the final line of defense is legal. The guide really stresses using LLCs, trusts, and the right insurance to separate your personal life from the business. So we've really synthesized a complete roadmap here from, defining what land is to analyzing cap rates all the way to tax loopholes and building your team.
Hmm.
And this whole structure is designed to help you avoid what the guide calls the biggest mistakes 95% of beginners make.
Which is usually getting stuck in analysis paralysis or choosing the wrong financing or not having the right legal protection in place.
The central goal of this deep dive was really to deliver the framework for that 12-month action plan to buy your first property.
Every single segment we just covered is a necessary step in that plan.
But the real takeaway, I think, it stretches way beyond just that first deal. The ultimate goal here is building generational wealth through real estate. And the authors have this line that says, one property can change everything.
And if that's true, if one property can really launch your family toward that long-term goal, then you have to look past just the monthly cash flow and focus on the legacy.
Right.
So based on everything we've talked about today, the financing, the tax shields, the protection, what systems do you, the listener, need to start putting in place today to move toward that goal?
Yeah.
That decision, that's really the most important first step on the whole roadmap.
That is an excellent, provocative thought to end on. Thank you for sharing these incredibly detailed sources with us. We will catch you on the next deep dive.